Welcome back to another episode of the Swagcast. I'm your host, Swaggy, Dr. Kush, and today I'm so excited I have a guest with me, the co-president of an esports league, the ESFL, a father, a gym owner, and a jiu-jitsu black belt, ZHunter. What's going on, Zach?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I'm very interested to talk to you about your jiu-jitsu background. I just got into jiu-jitsu. I've been going for a month, and I mostly got into it because I got my ass kicked in a wrestling match, which we all saw, we all know about. However, you've been a black belt for how many years now?
So I got my black belt in 2018, so coming up on 6 years.
Okay, so you must have been in jiu-jitsu for a long time.
Yeah, so I started in 2000. I want to say it's 2008 or 2009. Is when I first, started training jiu-jitsu.
How old were you when you first started training?
19?
So fresh out of high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you do any sports in high school?
Nothing, man. I played zero sports in high school. I played like baseball when I was a little kid. No sports in high school. No sports in middle school. That was it.
And now you're from Texas, so that surprises me. Were you born and raised in Texas?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that surprises me. You never got into football. No steps into football at
I
all.
was I was little, man. I was tiny. I was maybe like 130 pounds throughout high school. I was like one of the smallest kids in my class.
hmm
So
And
I never really.
so you remained little coming out of high school, I assumed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's mostly why you got into jiu-jitsu, kind of like a background for self-defense and.
So for me, it was like in high school, I was a bit of a bad kid, right?
Mhm.
Doing all the things I wasn't supposed to do. I actually dropped out when I was 16. Ended up getting my GED at 18. Um, Getting into a bunch of trouble though, and then I don't know. I watched The Ultimate Fighter like growing up, and then I was like, hey, actually, you know what it was? It was UFC 2009. Playing that game, I think 2 weeks after I first played that game and I bought it, I went and signed up for jiu-jitsu.
So UFC two, that's the one with Forrest Griffin on the cover.
Yeah, yeah. It was the first. I want to say it was the first THQ game, but it was the first UFC game that like wowed everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually
Um,
believe it was one of the first MMA games. All of the other ones were like really like not really considered MMA, more boxing based, but you could do MMA things. And this was
yeah,
the more UFC focused game.
I think it was like the first of its kind. It was like more of like a simulation than like an arcade game.
Yeah.
You know. Um, but yeah, I played that game. Watched UFC. I think UFC 100. And then I saw a replay of Frank Mir tapping out Brock Lesnar with that toe hold knee bar that he had.
hmm
And I want to learn that stuff and I want to fight in the UFC. And that was like my mindset then. And then I went and signed up at a gym and just never stopped training.
So now Jiu-Jitsu in 2024 and Jiu-Jitsu in 2008, those are two very different kind of scenes of jiu-jitsu because I quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was a much smaller sport in America way back then compared to what it is now. There's gyms everywhere now.
Yeah. So whenever I started jujitsu, there was no like career in jujitsu. Like there was no just jujitsu gym either. You couldn't go around and find a jujitsu gym. If you wanted to train jujitsu, you went to an MMA gym,
hmm
right? And so I did. I started an MMA gym, and then kind of the only course that you had with jujitsu, like if you wanted to make a career out of jujitsu, you had all these fighters that would, they would do some MMA fights or whatever, and their career was like in like the UFC or in Pride. Um, that was kind of the way to make it as a grappler back then or as a jiu-jitsu guy. Now it's just completely different. Like jiu-jitsu as a sport has grown into this huge thing where it's just jiu-jitsu. It's completely disconnected from MMA.
Yeah,
So
there's
it has been like
where you were gonna
crazy,
say you can finish.
doesn't it?
There's competitions everywhere, and there's rolling competitions that are based specifically on jiu-jitsu, and you also see these UFC guys going over and competing in them. Like a clip that went viral recently was a couple months ago, Aljo and the guy that kept pulling guard, and
Mikey, yeah, but Mikey said something about it. Go ahead.
yeah, and he was really upset because like the guy kept pulling guard, and he was like, "Why aren't we standing? Well, you're being a bitch sitting in your guard." But like we had a conversation off right before, which you mentioned that all jiu-jitsu guys aren't really the best wrestlers.
Yeah, but here's my thing with the Aljo take, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of understand it. Like, yeah, like you're not gonna pull guard and butt scoot in like a fight, but here's the thing: is like you have Aljo, who's probably the biggest offender when it comes to gaming the system in MMA. With he'll shoot his shot and then sit on his knees, bobbing his head and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same guy that's going into a jiu-jitsu competition getting mad because another dude gamed the rules in an
Yeah,
unrealistic manner.
yeah,
That's
no,
the wrong way. It's like, dude, it's just part of the rules of the sport.
yeah, and
Um,
Aljo is a big offender for doing that. I mean, look at both of his Yon fights. And even in one of his last fights, he kept going down and grabbing the canvas, which was really
yeah,
shitty.
bro. Like, how can you do that and then complain about somebody pulling guard?
Yeah, and
You know what I mean?
after a month of jiu-jitsu, I can see how guard is dangerous, and like sitting in your sitting in your guard is frustrating. Especially for me, it happened in a class actually. In an open mat, I was standing and he would not move his guard. So my only option was to go on top, and always in a bad position because it's always right into close guard.
Yeah. So my thing with that is like from like a self defense standpoint, it's 100% accurate, right? Like if you do jujitsu, you need to know how to do takedowns, um, just to be able to use your jujitsu, right? Um, but at the same time, it's like if we're talking about just strictly like getting mad at somebody in a tournament setting, it's like you're skipping all the, I want to say bullshit because wrestling's not bullshit, but the point of jujitsu is to submit somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I pull guard and you wanted to take me down anyways, then we're starting where you wanted to be anyways.
Yeah,
You know what I
precisely.
mean? So it's like we're just cutting the excess out, and we're starting from the guard, so I can submit you as fast as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that will put the other guy in better position. As if the wrestler, I can also see this side though. The wrestler can kind of take down into any control, like
Right.
Aljo could
Yeah.
get a takedown into side control. He could get a takedown, go right into mount. Like he could get a takedown and get into everything that's not just into close guard.
Right. No,
Um,
that's true too. So even more reason for a person with not good takedowns to sit guard.
yeah, no, exactly. I can see both sides of it. Um, Now, so starting in jiu-jitsu, and you started at an MMA gym, so that I actually didn't know that about you. So you actually have training in all of the arts, in striking side as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Obviously, it's what I love
Mhm.
to do. It's what I have the most experience in. But I've done MMA. Like I have an amateur fight. I actually pulled guard in that fight and armbarred the guy. I didn't even hit him.
So you had no strikes, and you armbarred him, and you won.
I threw a jab. He threw an overhand. The overhand weaved. We clinched up. And then I pulled guard and armbarred him.
Oh,
Yeah, broke his
beautiful.
arm.
Okay, that's awesome though. That we just went from a jujitsu guy pulling guard, and then you were like, "Yeah, I pulled guard." So do you still strike today, or like just to keep up with it for the fun, or?
So it's interesting you mentioned that because I'm thinking about doing another MMA run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little old now. I'm like 33, 34. And I've got a lot of injuries. But right now, I'm actually training with at a friend of mine's gym who has stuck with MMA for a while. Training with all those guys, all their pros. But I'm just trying to see how my body holds up. If my body holds up, for the next few months, and I feel good, then I'll probably do one or two more fights.
Oh, okay. And would those be amateur fights?
Yes, yeah, I'm not doing pro.
Well, what if those amateur fights went beautifully well for you and you did get the offer to go to like Dana White's Contender Series or even like do a small like side pro fight?
I probably wouldn't. For me, it's not about like at this point. It's just about accomplishing something that I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and getting out of my comfort zone. More than it is for like a love of MMA. Like I don't want CTE. I take that shit pretty seriously.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so for me, it's just like I want like an amateur title belt, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. I don't care about anything else. I just want to set my goal on that. And if I complete that goal, I can at least look back and be like, I did 3 fights. I had a title run, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like making it, even if even if the fights went really really well, I still don't think that I would have the desire to, you know.
Yeah.
And at the pro level with MMA, it's like you need to be all in, For me at this stage, like I've got a gym, I've got obviously my family, ESFL, like I got so much shit going on. And then these
Mm-hmm.
pro guys are obviously going to be training full time. So it's not, it's not an aspiration of mine like it used to be to make it to the UFC or anything.
Yeah.
But I do still want to, because I feel like I didn't even get a chance to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do anything to the guy, and I'll send you the video later, but I didn't do anything to him that I don't do in a jiu-jitsu competition. I didn't land a punch. I pulled guard and I armbarred him. It's the same thing I do at jiu-jitsu competitions.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's actually awesome that even you said 33, you want to jump into some amateur fights, and that would be cool to take home an amateur belt. And yeah, these pro guys, the amount of time and effort they put into the sport and grinding it and all of the sacrifices they take. It's similar to other things like content creators and things like that, all the sacrifices we take. And that sounds terrible because they're getting CTE and we're not. However,
Yeah,
the CTE comment, I mention it all of the time. I would never want CTE, and those guys like the Chris Benoit stories, and that was only pro wrestling. And going into it more, it's a scary thing that these pro guys do have to look at. Like there was a video with Nina that went viral, Nina D Drama. I'm not sure if you know who that is. She makes a lot of videos with like Sean Strickland and stuff,
yeah,
and she
yeah,
was
yeah.
she was interviewing Don Cerrone at the Power Slap and had mentioned something about CTE and him knowing a bunch about that. Uh, so while we're on the conversation, how do you feel about Power Slap being a somebody that trained in MMA and somebody that loves jiu-jitsu? How do you feel about just standing there and taking somebody's slap?
I don't think it bothers me as much as I see it bother a lot of people. I think it's stupid. I really think it's just stupid. Like you, you can't defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to defend yourself from it. So it's straight CTE. The people getting that, you know, I mean, we're not even seeing yet like these MMA guys that have been doing, fought in the UFC are just now retiring. Like they're starting to notice the effects of CTE and MMA. I
Mm.
can't imagine how bad it is for power slap. Like, dude, you got to think most of these guys can slap the shit out of you. So when you take 5 or 6 licks from these dudes, like how many times are you getting a concussion? You know,
Yeah, power slap
like
is especially the bigger dudes, and there's this one woman that reminds me of Chris Cyborg, uh, and she is just killing women out there, just like absolutely, just like winding up and taking them out. But the thing with power slap is, as most of these crazy ass things do, it started in Russia. Like I remember I remember seeing videos in like 2012, 2013, 2014 of like big bulky Russian dudes slapping each other inside of like what looked like prisons, and
Wow,
like
I didn't know that.
and another thing they're doing now over in Russia in cages, 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s, but
I
MMA
did see
fights.
that.
And like shit like that would be crazy
Didn't
if it
they have
ever
a
came to the States.
car MMA too? I think I remember seeing something about people fighting in a car.
I did
Did
see
you see
that. That was stupid. That was dumb. They do dumbass shit over there, as Americans do, we just take. And the power slap, that was all Dana's fault. That's all Dana's fault that's there. I don't think anybody touches
that?
that, and I think power
Look,
slap's the
man,
only league.
I'm a firm believer. Like, if that's what these dudes wanted, they're grown adults. Um, if that's what they want to do, you know, more power to them. I guess I would never do that personally. Um, but yeah, I don't like if there's. I don't know how it's going. Is like power step tanking or is it doing good?
I don't know the exact numbers, but from their last event, like it looked like Dana had to get a lot of like different influencers like Aiden Ross, Kai Cenat, Sneeko, there to kind of like get more eyes on it. And it's also on Rumble. A lot of people don't even know what Rumble is. So
Yeah,
it's just like tough for them. So numbers probably aren't great, but it's probably similar to when UFC first started, because UFC when it first started numbers weren't great either.
yeah. See, like, I mean, it may be different if it was like pretty promising or something, and you're slapping the shit out of people doing fine. But for me, it's like doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, and good way to get CTE. So you got to imagine these guys aren't getting paid that well, you know? Like, I
No,
don't know what the company is looking at, but
they're all free events too, so I can't see Data making a lot of money from this. So I don't see these guys getting paid a lot either. Kind of similar to like the influencer boxing side, which a lot of influencer boxers on the bottom lower half of the prelims aren't really getting paid a lot, but also usually both sides in those aren't really established boxers, and neither of them can really box. So
right,
so there may not be any like head damage taken because neither of them might land. Uh, but as we go higher up into the influencer boxing, those are the guys that get paid, like the Jake Pauls, the Salt Poppies.
right.
Uh, but so while we're talking about influencer boxing, how do you feel about that space?
You know, when it first started, I thought it was really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It like really got on my nerves actually. But I'm kind of a fan of Jake Paul, man, and this is why. When he first started, I think that it was obviously for like I don't want to say for clout, but for more eyes on himself. And so he called out, these old retired MMA fighters. Um, I was like, this dude's just trying to like exploit people. Um, but the dude can really box, man. Like he's a fighter, he's a boxer.
Yeah, and he's
You know?
getting a lot of slack right now for like boxing pro boxers that are just trash cans. But but that's boxing. That's literally the sport of
Yeah,
boxing. Every pro boxer started with cans. Like Floyd's first
100%.
10 fights had like a combined like 7 wins.
Yeah, yeah. It for me, like it used to bother me, but like I appreciate it and I like the culture that it brings. It's like, man, um, and outside of the Jake Paul thing, I think that it's brought a lot of influencers to be like, hey, we got a problem, let's squash it. You know what I mean? Let's get in there and let's do this. And I like that culture. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think that
yeah,
that's something that's like maybe because I'm an old head, maybe because I'm older. That for me, it's like if we have a problem, like, hey man, let's get after it. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of like that's how I was raised. I got my ass beat a lot in high school because, like I said, I was one of the smaller kids.
hmm
But dude, I was always down to fight. You know what I mean?
yeah. That's
And so for
exactly
me,
how I was too. Always getting into scraps.
it's like, man, like I just really like that culture. I think that, um, and this goes back to kind of the situation we talked about with the wrestling match with Romero, was it's like there's a newfound respect and admiration that you have for somebody when you go against them in a combat sport. You know, it doesn't
Mm.
matter the level. It's just there's no, I don't know how to describe it. There's no like, you it feels like you've known the person for much longer, right? Like after you got done with that match with Romero, it's like you felt his experience, you felt his hard work, his discipline.
Oh
You know,
yeah. After that match with Romero, like it kind of like it opened up a special bond. Like me and him are boys
yeah,
now. Like no matter all like the tweets he be making and whatnot, still my brother. I was talking to him the other day actually. Every class I'd be texting him, and just letting him know what we went over in class. And then oh also I got blisters on the outside of my fingers from gi grips. I was not
good
used to
too.
it. And I texted him and I was like, yo, I have blisters on the outside of my fingers. And then like 30 minutes later, I was like, oh, it's from the gi grips. And like he was dying laughing. Like I'll always text him stuff like that. He's been sending me instructionals from Gordon and stuff like that. Like just trying to better myself. And
So
that match was awesome. Like the fact that he invited me out there to do the match, and I know it started with beef at first, but it was really never a beef thing. Like the second he slid into my DMs, it was like respect from there. And
right.
and like I'm definitely showing up. Like there was one snowstorm that a lot of people were like, "Oh, Swaggy's ducking," but like I was showing up from the get. Like I was a little nervous. I kind of knew what could happen. There was a little bit in the back of me that if I get some wrist grips, get a double leg in there, I could shock the world. But that didn't happen. But it was a fun time, and after that, it got more people talking about possibly doing their own matches or possibly having a little card. And
I think it's great, man. Like, yeah, for one, you got more stones than me, man. I pull guard on Romero every time I roll with him. I did
I
not try to wrestle with that man.
I tried to sit in guard at one point in the match, but I didn't have a guard, so he just kind of got right in the top mount. And
I saw.
I even like in the version where there's sound, you can hear him laughing because I was like, Aljo made it seem like you couldn't do that, and he just like hopped right in mount.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, it was a fun time for sure. Like, and then he brought me to jiu-jitsu after.
I think that just in general, like the influencer, combat sports are a good thing. I think it carries a sort of positivity for the culture. I think it's positive for combat sports. Um, you know, I think anytime, and like you said, the beef was kind of like not so much like there's definitely some disagreements that you and Romero had, but for
Mm.
pretty much it was pretty respectful. Um, but even for a lot of these guys that it's not, like I do feel like there's some form of bond or respect that people um, that usually come to after a bout. Now sometimes that's not true. Like you look at like Connor and Dustin Poirier, the second one, like the way that fight ended.
Mm.
Um, but for the most part, I think that there is that bond or newfound respect for your opponent after that,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
for sure. And that's what I think that this community, the UFC community, necessarily, because it was more of a match based in the community, because the whole beef uprised from I was live. I watched a couple videos on YouTube. I think that was the week that Marshall was dropping the react videos, and everybody was kind of reacting to each other's videos, and everybody was beefing. So I was just like, why don't we just fight? Like why don't we just throw down like anything you guys want? And I wasn't specifically talking me, but 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 then it ended up being me. And if I got to be the first to do something for other people to do it, I'm with it. And I've been trying to speak a 420 event into existence. A couple people that I do think need to come on the mat and get taught a lesson. Necessarily, maybe if it's even not me, I would like to see you pull guard against Romero and tap him out with his own gi. I wouldn't mind watching that. But yeah, like a lot of these guys started conversating, and there was even a hypothetical ESFL card thrown out.
I posted something about that. I don't. What's the downside to it? I mean, the biggest thing you say is somebody gets hurt, somebody could get hurt, but I would do it in a legitimate way. Like
Mm,
I've already, considered talking to some of the local promoters that I know, maybe doing some sort of like ESFL slash like MMA event or grappling, some sort of combat sport intermixed with it, because I have no experience in hosting any sort of real life event for like combat sports.
mm,
You know, if we were to do something like that, we would definitely need outside consultation at the very least.
mm-hmm.
Um, but no, it's something I've considered, and I don't think it would be a net negative for the community. It would bring eyes to the community for sure. Like, name two people that have the biggest beef that you know of. I mean, maybe from Prime Time or ESFL, not Prior, any of those guys, but just name two people.
Uh, it's tough. There's a lot of them out there. Smudger and Vuck got a little unspoken beef. That one would be a good one.
There you go. You do this. You do a round of grappling, a round of striking, and a round of UFC 5. Best of three.
that would
Perfect
be
match.
crazy. That would
So,
be crazy. There's a couple guys I would call out for that. D Mart or even Old Man Boiler. I would need somebody in my athleticism realm. So that's why we're looking there. No more athletic demons right now. I'll eventually get my Romero rematch one day, but I want I want to take a couple chubby content creators like myself out first before I get back to the actual grapplers.
I think it would be a good thing. Um, and it would definitely get eyes on the community. Obviously, uh, UFC 5 isn't getting viewership for anybody hardly, you know. Um, so I think in dry spells like this, that would be a perfect solution to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. UFC 5 it's really it's not necessarily any of the creators' faults. It's more the game's not necessarily ready right now for enough people to want to watch it and enough people to care about it. A lot of people that I've spoken to have uninstalled or won't even touch it right now. So why would they click onto a content creator and watch them play it? And most of us do be getting frustrated even when we try to stream it. Even a couple competitive players I've spoken to have been taking the first season and will even taking the second season off because they just feel as if the game can be so much better, which is true. The game can be so much better.
It definitely can, and it's frustrating just as a game changer. Obviously, we can't talk about everything, that we that goes on behind the scenes, but I think a lot of times for us, because we see the game from an early stage all the way into the end cycle of the game, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So like we played the first few builds of UFC 5 like really long time ago. So we had like basically UFC 4 with like transition based submissions, you know,
Yeah.
and that to us was like, wow, this is really cool. But it comes in stages. Like they build the game obviously one thing at a time. Um, and so for us, as we're playing this game, these early builds and stuff, um, you know, a lot of times when one thing is fixed, other things are broken or changed or whatever it is, right? There was a point in the builds where we were basically playing UFC 4 with more damage, or what it seemed to be more damage, with transition-based submissions, which to me is amazing because the worst part of UFC 4 was what?
The
The submissions,
submissions.
right?
Yeah.
So, and then what happens is things get changed for whatever reason. Sometimes we're not even notified. Like the stamina was fine in the early builds that we played, you know? And then
Mm-hmm.
it gets changed for release. I have no inside knowledge on this, but my assumption is that the reason why every UFC game releases and within the first few months always has like crazy stamina is because of casuals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's like it's been that way since UFC 1. The game's release, the stamina is crazy. Then towards the end of the game's life cycle, the stamina is fixed.
Yeah. That's
You
a
know,
big problem
so,
right now is the stam.
yeah. But I'll say this too. I don't even think one of the bigger problems is stamina. You know, I was actually watching one of Prize's videos yesterday. I think he dropped. Um, it was a UFC 3 video, and Nick Diaz. I think he was fighting a Nick Diaz, and the Nick Diaz player threw like 130 or 140 strikes,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's like, "Well, he's gassing. The dude gassed out, could barely walk straight." To me, that's not realistic. Nick Diaz throw 140 strikes and he's tired.
Yeah, that Diaz
Like,
brothers
come
don't
on
get
now.
gassed. The Diaz
They
brothers
don't,
do
man.
not
And there's a
gas.
lot of fighters like that. You know,
Yeah.
for me, the problem isn't always stamina; it's fighter uniqueness, and it's a lack of vulnerability. There's a lack of danger. Like if you knew when you came in, you were gonna get, slip straighted, and that was gonna knock you on your ass, you would have a different approach, right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter how much stamina you had.
Mm. And that's funny that you mentioned fighter uniqueness. That's actually what I feel like is one of the biggest flaws of this game. And also the fact that they dropped the game without, I know they're doing a good job at it now, but they dropped the game without any new fighters.
Yeah,
Um so there was no fighter uniqueness, no new fighters, and a lot of the fighters were just copy and paste, or some fighters were given these models that like Aljo's model looked homeless. Uh, it looked like
yeah,
a homeless man. It was brutal. Uh, and to drop a game like that, especially the deluxe edition was expensive, and a lot of the content creators bought the deluxe edition. We were telling the community just buy the normal edition if you're going to buy it, but a lot of people were buying the deluxe because that was the only way you were getting new fighters.
right. Yeah. So for me, and this is just me personally, like we have a majority of like the top 3 to top 5 fighters, right, in each weight
Mm.
class. So like I'm not gonna use some guy that just made it to the top 15, like in ranked, and I don't think 95% of people will, or
Mm.
in a competitive setting. The idea that you're getting at is 100% true. You're like, well, dude, we had literally 0 new fighters. It's kind of crazy. It's for sure crazy, but the impact that it has on me or the ESFL, like nobody's gonna use those fighters anyways. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah,
So really, it didn't impact me, and so I'm not to say that it's not a bad thing, but it didn't suck for me because I wasn't going to use them anyways, you know. Um, and then I think another thing too is like what I really enjoy about UFC 5 is the transition based submissions. I think it's a great system, um, and I really like, dude. I didn't play UFC 4. I did
Mm.
all those events for ESFL for UFC 4, and it was a game I couldn't stand. And I don't think people realize that about me. Like, I don't think that every game that they put out is just this great game,
Mm.
right? For me, I despised UFC 4. It was crazy because we had so much opportunity for the game. You know, we had the live event that we did. We had the UFC Esports League. Like it was crazy the way that game went off. And I personally feel like UFC 4 is worse than 5. And hear me out on that. It's because 5 isn't done being finished yet. But for
Right.
me, like the submissions in that game were terrible. I can't stand the fact that they had that ground and pound. they changed the ground and pound from like how it was in 2 to 3 to how it
Mm-hmm.
was in 4 to 5. So that put a distaste in my mouth. And then just the crazy cosmetics and the way they went like away from authenticity for 4, it really it put a sour taste in my mouth, and I really did not play that game all that much.
I hated 4, and for somebody that had like 1,800 hours on 4, I was always displeased while playing it, and I was like a negative Nancy at all times. I was never not complaining when I was on that game. That game is horrible, and something I'm starting to learn as I speak to more game changers are none of you guys are actually pleasured with the game right now. And you guys didn't like UFC 4, and a lot of you guys that I'm speaking to were also around for UFC 3. I don't know if you were a game changer for 3.
I've been a game changer since the program release, so since UFC 1.
Okay, so you've been a game changer from the get. So
I
you've
was
been
in the
around.
first one. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, for me, man, it's like, is 5 in a bad spot right now? I 100% agree 5 is in a bad spot.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where I stand with it. I know a lot of the developers personally, right?
Yeah.
These dudes aren't lazy, unpassionate people that just show up to their job and get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've met these dudes. I've trained with these guys. There's black belt developers. Some of those developers are black belts.
Mm-hmm.
And you telling me they don't care about the sport? They're not passionate? You know what I mean? That's crazy, bro. Now, granted, I'm not saying every one of the developers is that passionate. What I'm saying is there's very passionate, dedicated members on the team. And for me, I'm all about seeing the good in what somebody's trying to do. So for 4, I was displeased because of the direction that they chose. They obviously chose a very casual oriented, like Fortnite approach to 4, and
Mm-hmm.
it was repulsive to me. I didn't like it. With 5, it if you take the balancing stuff out, like it obviously was poorly optimized and tuned. What is the direction that they were going? It was authenticity, right?
Hmm.
It's got to be.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the presentation with the blood, the cuts, the transition based submissions? They're going towards a more authentic, like violent approach to the sport. Well, that's a good thing, right? On surface level,
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be as real as it
it's
gets.
supposed to be. It's supposed to be. So I would rather applaud the efforts than shit on somebody because it's like they had more success with 4,
Mm-hmm.
and in my opinion, that was a step in the wrong direction. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah, for
so for
sure.
me, it's like, okay, UFC 5 is a step in the right direction, but we just gotta we gotta get on the same page with the shit that's wrong with the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my concern is that these developers, the ones that do care, they're like, man, okay, well, we're trying to get this game, we're trying to go the authentic, more realistic route or direction, but then these guys are going to shit on us anyways, and this community hates us. I don't want them to tune the community out completely and not listen to the game changers or the community because they're like, well, man, we're trying to appease these people and we can't.
Mm.
So fuck them, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I can see how the developers can like kind of start to get a little like discouraged from seeing
Yeah,
the community outcries. And the UFC community is like I always say all the time that the entire community is cooked. Meaning that we have gone way past reality in every aspect of the creators being too egotistical. I don't think every creator is too egotistical, and I do think some creators are right on both sides. However, also going into like the comp players, and I think the toxicity in this game is the worst that it's been, as to where the community just thinks like this game is an exact copy and paste from 4, which it at some points it does look like that. And as to go back to on the developers being lazy, I don't believe that at one point because developing's a hard job. I've talked to a lot of developers that work for free, as to like 5M GTA roleplay developers who don't get paid for all of their hard work, and the developers of UFC Undisputed Forever, which is the modding version of
yeah.
UFC Undisputed 3. And these developers don't make any money for their jobs, but they are so passionate in what they do, and they can't wait to be able to work more on it. As to where the EA developers, my problem isn't ever with the EA developing team, because that UFC team's probably no bigger than 10 people. And to a certain point in the year, a lot of those developers probably get pulled and put on other projects.
Yep.
And my problem is with the higher ups of EA, that looks at the community as a whole and says, well, they're going to be like this anyway. Fuck them. Don't give them any money. Don't give them any budget increases. Let's keep the budget the same as it was for 4. Fuck them. As where they could treat us like another community, like the Madden community, who's equally as toxic. I promise you, I've been playing a lot of Madden, and equally as toxic, but the money is thrown into there because they know it comes back. As to where there's
Right.
really been no investment in the MMA games.
Yeah. So, yeah, you won't really find me defending EA. Like, look, man, I don't love EA because I'm a game changer. I don't love EA because of some weird, or they pay me or anything else. And that's another thing I want to talk about eventually, about the pay thing with game changers, because it's not like they pay us to give good reviews on the game. But what was I saying? Lost my train of thought.
You got me more focused on the payment now, but
Oh yeah.
you were talking about the track going into like you don't necessarily love EA because you're a game changer.
Oh yeah. So for me, it's like EA is a publicly traded company.
Mm-hmm.
The point of a publicly traded corporation like that is what? It's profits.
Yes.
100%. It's the net profit. So what they're doing is just it's capitalism. They're making their money. It's a publicly traded company. They're trying to increase the profit and decrease spending. You know,
Yeah.
to turn more profit. So for me, it's just like a result of a publicly traded company trying to make money. You know, I don't love it at all by any means. I think it definitely kind of detracts from what gaming could be. And that's why I think most people have more respect for like indie developers, oftentimes, even though they're less experienced. But the reality is this EA is not going anywhere, right? The UFC license, I think, got renewed, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, for 10
For
years.
10 years. So we got this for 7 more years, right? So I would prefer, instead of going head-to-head with the developers and going back and forth with them and talking shit, is, look, we've been mocked for this, limited resources. The developers work within the confines they're given. You know, developers aren't given all this money in one department and are like, here, make the best MMA game you can. You know what I mean? That's not how that works. It's broken out into so many different departments. Like you said, people leave one game and go to another game. So they work within the confines they're given. And I would prefer to be working with them, you know, and kind of on the same page, rather than demonizing the developers along with EA just because I'm unhappy with the product.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference, is a lot of people, they're angry and they want somebody to blame for the game state. And I get it, bro, but EA is going to EA. We can agree on that.
Yep, 100%.
But if we can get along with the developers, if we can kind of get on the same page and make them feel welcomed within the community, then they would probably interact a little bit more. You know?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Making them feel
for me,
like
it's not about people being upset with the game. It's about the way that they're going about it, you know?
Yeah.
Look, if you don't like, and I've always said this, and I understand people don't like it, if you don't like something, don't support it. Straight up. There's no other way to tell EA that you don't like their product than to not spend money on it.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's
And
that simple, man. Don't play the shit. I understand, like, if you're a content creator, it's one thing or whatever, but like the only way to get any real change outside of talking with the developers or being in a having like a positive communication is going to be their sales. If it hits their pockets heavy, things will change.
mm-hmm. And it has already died completely. It's not really, it's not the most popping game at the moment as it was when it did first come out. Um, my only thing is, I do understand the not touching it, not playing it, but that's our only source of MMA enjoyment when it comes to video games. That's all we have. Like for big MMA fans, for people that love the UFC, like I love MMA as a whole. I always have been a massive MMA fan. So being able to play that game and like it kind of like it reaches like a happiness in my heart. It makes me I enjoy being able to play an MMA game, go on quick fight and knock some bums out. But it's just like not enjoyable to do it on 5. However, a lot of us have been. I played it for 10 minutes yesterday just to go on. I did 2 quick fights, and the second one I got cheesed, so I shut it off. And
Yeah.
that's how I've been. The
So for
cheese
me, like
comes.
when I tell you I played 5, I didn't play 5. I probably have less than 100 hours in that game.
Mm. I,
Like,
I'll go on for like a couple hours when a new update drops or when they drop new alter egos. Because I actually do enjoy the alter egos a lot. The new Tony Ferguson alter ego is a demon. I pick him and I only spin. I YouTuber Nabality hates me because I just go for doctor stoppages with Tony Ferguson as I just spin and cheese, and I get death threats in the messages, and that makes it a little bit more fun for me. Cheesing people makes it a little bit more fun for me, and I realize why people cheese now, especially in the state of the game, because like it's enjoyable. It kind of is, but you can't do it all the time.
yeah, I mean, and I get like if it's the only game, you have. But even for me, it's like UFC 4 was the only new MMA game, and I had no desire to play it because I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah,
You know, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's going to vary person to person, but for me, at this point in my life, with everything I have going on, not playing something that I don't enjoy is totally doable for me. You know,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't spend because I guess my time is put in so many different places. I don't
Mm,
spend any time um, doing things that I absolutely hate unless there's a good reason for it. And again, content creation is a little different. A lot of people make their money off of it, so
mm-hmm.
that's understandable. But um, yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, UFC is not my bread and butter when it comes like it is community wise, but really like I've been having fun on other games anyway, and especially for the gamers, I've been talking to a lot of the pro guys that I've gotten a lot of them into Helldivers too. So a lot of them have been grinding that, and now they're hell diving instead of fighting people. So that it's always fun to see. However, I do want to loop back real quick because when I asked Romero about the game changer pay, he just kind of smiled at me and gave me a Romero response. So I would like to ask you because you did bring it up. You don't have to give me a number. I don't care about how much you guys get paid. I more care about why you guys get paid. And you mentioned that it's not to talk good about the game.
yeah. So we don't get paid to talk good about the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll get into the martial stuff too a little bit. I want to talk too much about out of place,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think something does need to be said. So for one, we get paid when we test out the builds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we test, we test the builds. We give feedback on the builds, and then it's up to them whether they implement the things that we're telling them or not.
Yeah.
And this was before release, by the way. We haven't really had any builds after release.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we give feedback, and then they fix things in the build, and then we get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that happens for each build. Then there was some projects that we did with EA. Obviously, ESFL did the 2 events with EA
Mm-hmm.
at launch. Marshall had his video. And then those are just projects that we put together. We talked with the community managers, put together the ESFL events, and we obviously got paid to do work on those.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marshall was reading like a script that they kind of wanted him to read to promote the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's reading off of this script the things that they're kind of like wanting him to read. And I think that was misconstrued when Praxis said Marshall was lying. It's like, bro, anybody knows like when you're doing like promo material for a game, you're just reading off of the script. They kind of are highlighting the differences, with the game. And so it's like you could say some of it's misleading,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that any content creator can look at that and be like, he's definitely just reading off of the script for the game, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so sorry, I just got a message. And obviously, I'm sure he got paid for that or whatever. I don't know how much. It's not my business.
Mm.
But I do think that it's not like Marshall got on there and was like, EA was like, hey, we want you to make this really great video about the game and pump your audience up. No, it's literally, you listen to that, you can tell that it was taken from a script,
Yeah.
and read off of. So again, we don't get paid to talk good about the game. We get paid to, one, test builds, and two, create content.
Yes. Okay.
You know.
So
Now I'm sure they
yeah.
wouldn't love it if they're like, "Hey, we want you to create promo material for the game," and they're like, "This game's fucking awful," or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, there's no we get paid to kiss ass. That's bullshit, and
Yeah.
it gets really old to hear because like it's not like we go in the game changer chat and talk to these developers and just kiss ass, man. We tell them what needs to be fixed. We tell them how frustrated the community is. You know, the reality is that we have access to so many developers, and those developers have time constraints and a million other things that they've got going on. Um, and a lot of the things that could be fixed or should be fixed may not be in the realm of possibility for them due to resources, which
Mm-hmm.
was mocked.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that really got on my nerves. Is like, I'm not making excuses for EA. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation that the devs are in and why it can't be fixed right now. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Um, so again, it's not, you won't find me excusing EA. You will find me, however, taking up for the developers that I know put hard work in. You know?
Yeah. For sure. And I would love to speak to one of the developers if I could get pointed into the right direction of one of them. I'm sure it would be a great conversation. And one more thing I want to speak to before we get out of here. ESFL. It was mentioned a couple times, and you are one of the co-owners, and I'm always confused about the uprising in the beginning of the ESFL because I don't know if I'm wrong here, but did the owners change a couple of times?
Yes. Well, a little bit. So when ESFL first started, it was UFC 3.
Mm-hmm.
Were you around when UFC 2? Did you play UFC 2?
I played UFC 2, but I wasn't a creator, so I wasn't really in the space
Okay.
much.
So this is how it started. They had the live event competition for UFC
Mm-hmm.
2. It was myself, Kinetic Energy, Iron Sharif, and MMA Pro
Mm-hmm.
that were the finalists for that. So you can find that video on YouTube where we competed in Vegas for 10K.
I've
Afro
actually watched that recently before 5 came out. I watched that recently because it was Kinetic one, right?
No, Afro won.
Afro one.
He beat me and then he beat Kinetic.
Hmm.
But that was kind of like my college days. Like I didn't have a kid. I didn't really have so many responsibilities. I was just going to school, working, and then training. And so, dude, I played the shit out of UFC 2.
Yeah.
And I was one of the best, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I qualified for that event. We went to Vegas. That's how Vegas MMA came a thing, with me and Kinetic and D-Mart and
Mm-hmm.
Anza. And after that, it just seemed like EA was like, nah, we don't want to do an esports team for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last of it. And after that, I was like, man, this sucks because it was just now building this competitive community. We had camps coming along. That was when EK and T4H came.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like, man, they created a scene only to just like abandon it,
Mm.
you know? And then so I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to create something. I know the developers because I was already a game changer. I knew Marshall through the Game Changer program. I knew people within the competitive community because I was a competitive player.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the glue. I don't have any real talent. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just the guy that knows people, you know?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so the ESFL came about right as UFC 3 launched. And I kind of got Marshall to do a badass promo. Um, so Bossman, EK Bossman is our graphics guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredibly talented. He does, I won't name the MMA promotions, but he makes all sorts of promo materials for big MMA organizations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, your mic cut out. Oh, there we go. Um, oh, there you go.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So Bailey and then messaged me. It was like, hey, he saw us running these events and they were terrible, like the
Mm-hmm.
production, right? He's like, I can help you with this. Let me help you.
Mm-hmm.
And we jumped on a call, and then like he kind of walked me through because I had no idea what I was doing aside from streaming fights, you know.
Yeah.
And then he set up the presentation for it. Him and
Mm-hmm.
Bossman connected on what they needed for like commentary booth and a fight card and all that stuff. And the end product was ESFL,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Whereas we were just hosting fights within the community for the community, and then he set it up, the presentation. So at first it was just me, Balian, and Bossman.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, then Bruce Lee Rob was streaming a lot back in UFC 3. We thought, hey, this dude would be perfect for commentary. So we brought him on, and um, he ended up becoming a part owner. He started helping us out a lot in times where Balian couldn't make it, and I had no idea how to stream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so dude, he's done so many events just hosting those. So it was then Balian, myself, Bossman, and Bruce Lee Rob. Then Luber came along. We were in the Luber era for a while there, where he did a phenomenal job with everything, but it was consuming so much of his time.
Mm.
I ended up stepping away, and then we brought Boiler in.
Okay.
That's kind
Um,
of
yeah, I always get confused because there's so many there's so many owners within the
so right now,
ESFL.
and then we have Beckett too. We have Beckett, who's been kind of taking over the production side,
Yeah.
because as we grow, um, it's very hard to like you need separate jobs for commentators and production
Mm-hmm.
at a certain, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's now right now as of now it's Beckett, Balian, Bossman, Bruce Lee, Rob, Boiler, and myself.
Okay. Yeah, I just always confusion for me. And now going into the live event that you guys ran not last year, the year before, I believe it was 2022, the
Yeah.
ESFL live event.
Uh-huh.
And was that the first and only live event that you guys have run, or have there been more?
So that's the first one that
That was
we've
the
done.
first. Okay.
Honestly, it kind of fell into our lap. There's definitely a lot of hard work put into the event,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of just the situation, it was just crazy because I had this distaste for UFC 4, but these opportunities kept like throwing themselves at us, like
Yeah.
one after another. So we worked with Prospects by Sports Illustrated guys who already set up events for like youth sporting
Mm-hmm.
activities. So they're like pros at that stuff, dude. They found an opportunity for us to get involved at the HyperX Arena as part of a bigger esports activation and another esports thing. So people don't know this about the HyperX Arena. We were supposed to share that venue and the time for that venue with Smash Bros and like Mario Kart. So we were supposed to have like a small subset of space in there and a small allocation of time in the venue.
Yeah.
Um, and then what happened is that COVID canceled all of it.
Oh.
The
So.
second round of COVID or whatever. And so Smash Bros, Mario Kart dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the event was still paid for.
So you guys stayed, and you guys just took the entire space and time.
Yes. Yeah. So we basically, it's not that it was completely paid for,
Mm-hmm.
but we got a heavily discounted rate,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So it was a cool thing that kind of just, it happened. We definitely are looking to do more. It's just a matter of, finding the right opportunities, getting the right investors involved. And it sucks that it's not happening for five right now, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it will ever happen because honestly, I didn't see that coming,
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I keep saying that later down the road, as the game gets better, there will be more comp for it, and it will come back. And I hope so because I personally love Vegas. I've been 3 times, and I'm a delinquent, so I'd love to get the community partying with me a little bit. And then roll onto the jiu-jitsu mats the next day because I did hear that's what you guys did. Um, which sounds awesome. But uh,
We
but
did.
y- but yeah,
We
man.
went to. Oh, go ahead.
No, 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 no. What were you gonna say?
So we went to a buddy of mine's gym in Vegas the day before the event.
Mm-hmm.
It was me, Marco Romero, and Bailey, and we just kind of rolled for about 2 hours. So it was a cool experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome. I just the esports space is it's such a clicky small space, and I'm just happy that a lot of things have been happening with the beef, but there's still like the positivity behind it that like we can all work together and make this thing work. Like I truly believe that we can all work together and make this thing work. There's beef right now, but everything's gonna blow over. And I last time it blew over, then I got my ass kicked in a wrestling match, and nobody beefed for a little bit. I thought it was over. I thought I did it. I thought I saved the day, but
I think that there's people that have to have an enemy.
mm-hmm.
There's just, I'm not, I think that, yeah, there's people that they have to have an opposition, and if they don't have an opposition, it doesn't feel normal. Some people need that chaos. Um, I agree with you. I think, I hope everybody can kind of move forward because the fracture in the community is only impacting the community. Um, and I think for me, like, I'm willing to tolerate everybody in the community because, like, it's like your family. You don't really get to choose your family. You know,
Yeah,
we don't get to choose who's in this community, and we have a very small community. So when people cut each other off, it's going to have a negative impact. Um, but again, that's each person's choice. You
mm-hmm.
know, um, hopefully, we get some good changes in UFC 5. We're actually on an unspecified date going to be and going to a game changer event in person. So um, obviously a lot of the community feedback that we have going forward is going to be expressed in person to the
Mm-hmm.
devs. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, they see us playing like devil's advocate online, and then they get in their feels and get upset. When in reality, it's not necessarily that we disagree completely. It's we disagree with certain way people do things, you
Yeah,
know, and that can be misconstrued as us just disagreeing.
Mm-hmm.
I can debate you on something without disagreeing. I can play devil's advocate, and I think there's good reason to play devil's advocate many times too.
Mm. Well, all right, Zach. I really appreciate sitting down having this conversation today. It's been a great conversation. We talked about a lot. It was a great fucking conversation. Thank you to everybody that tuned in, that listened. If you want to send them to your Twitter, that's your actual Twitter handle right there. Very cool. Shout out to Cyrus for the new borders. And tell them where to follow ESFL and things like that.
At ESFL Gaming.
All right, and that's it. We'll see y'all every single Wednesday. I've been Swaggy. This is at Zach Jitsu. I'll see y'all next Wednesday. Peace.